Sorry. I forgot to
Recording. I don't want to be recorded.
record.
Just kidding. So we see a lot in the news right now about our division of housing since that's the governor's priority right now, and everyone's really focused on building affordable housing. And I would be willing to guess that we have more division of housing projects in Lake County right now than division of local government. But our team does lots of things. We're kind of, best known by the legislature, sometimes unfortunately, for being able to get money into communities really quickly and efficiently. So we have kind of our bread and butter programs that are sort of permanent, like the Energy Impact Assistance Fund, severance tax, federal mineral lease funds that we use heavily to invest in infrastructure in communities. But we also handle kind of smaller programs that are maybe one-time little, legislative pet projects, those type of things. We helped get, like ARPA funding. We helped with the mechanism that actually put the money in the account. So we're known for that. We also do technical assistance in communities. So we can do, I know the sorts of things you've been put through to get onboarded. We offer doing kind of, a freshen up training workshop once you've been in for a while and need to go over kind of the 101 stuff again, and we can work with you on doing goal setting. We can do workshops, whatever you're working on. We're happy to come in and help with technical assistance. Um, I let me So our open projects with you all right now, I would say the main one, the big focus is kind of I'll be candid, what Lake County, Leadville, the whole community is doing with facilities, specifically, the pressure from the aquatics folks. Lake County kind of wants to do this convention center. There's maybe a need for a library, and then the city recently acquired the building on the top of the hill. So I've been kind of working on figuring out how to support both entities with that and looking into that. We also have an open climate change plan grant that I think just got started. Tim, is that right?
Yes.
That just went out for an RFP. So that one is a little bit newer. We just had worked on the housing assessment with Jackie. We supported that. So those funds do come from extractive industries, and we kind of consider all communities in Colorado so in some way impacted by most of the funds come from the oil and gas industry, but some do come from mineral extraction, like Lake County. Um, so the way that we weight that sort of so that the communities that are most impacted by industry get higher scores is by an EIAF score, and Lake is 8, which is awesome. A lot of my communities don't have any extraction, and they'll have like a 2. So you're automatically a little bit more competitive when it comes to our funding. I think that I could talk about our other sort of smaller, we have the Division of Property Taxation and the Division of Assessment Appeals. So your staff is going to work with them a lot when it comes to, sorting out appeals from homeowners, landowners, and working on your property tax calculations and that sort of thing. They're small but powerful departments that work almost exclusively with county staff, actually. So I could stop there and just see what questions you all have. I know we'll end up working together a lot, and I know you're getting tons thrown at you. So that's the basics. I think let me know if you don't have my contact information. I think I emailed all of you early on when you got elected. But make Tim give it to you
Thank you.
as a parting gift. Tim, when is your congratulations, and when is your last day at Lake?
Thanks, Randy. March 24th. So
Okay,
there's plenty of
Trader. Hope you enjoy those northern regions.
time. Thank you.
March 24th, right?
Yep.
Gonna come
I have a question.
fast.
I have a question for you, Randy.
Sure.
How can county commissioners engage with the state's budget process to protect the extractive industry funding for local governments?
Oh, do we need to protect it?
Uh-huh.
Oh shoot, okay. Thanks for asking that question, Tim.
Is it under threat?
Yes.
Okay.
Ruh-roh.
Yeah, we've had a rough couple of weeks. Thanks, Tim. It's Friday. I shouldn't keep it light.
No, I love bringing up these things.
Right. We are always, unbiased. We can't get into lobbying of any kind. We have organizations for that. Yours is CCI.
Yes.
But in my personal opinion, these funds are exclusively local government funds, and our team works extremely hard. And when we have projects, we lock ourselves in a room and yell at each other about the little details of, what is eligible and what's not according to statute. And we just try to be really careful. We try to be good stewards of the money that we actually distribute. A lot of the money goes directly to local governments, and as far as I know, that's pretty secure right now, except for the fact that in the long term, oil and gas is probably on the decline. So we're sort of expecting the next 50 years for those funds to start dwindling, and local governments needing to start identifying alternative sources of revenue. But in the short term, more or less the legislature has traditionally sort of respected that the statutory purpose for the funds, which is that they exist to support local governments and local government infrastructure. And then maybe that tradition went away, or they just came up with a lot more expenses than revenues in the state budget, and they have a giant hole in it. And I think all told, over the last year, they've swept about 45 million from our funds, which is a huge chunk. We're also having a bit of a perfect storm where we had some amazing, bumper years that we were putting out about 100. We put out about $400 million into local governments and infrastructure in the last 4 years. So can't complain. It was wonderful. That might be sort of leveling off because, or we're expecting severance funds to just sort of be flatter in the next couple of years. In addition to that, there's something that's a little bit above my head, but called an ad valorem property tax return. And we don't get to know much about it because taxes for individual companies are proprietary. The Department of Revenue can't disclose that information, but every now and then we'll have to issue a big return. And we had one in November that was big enough to eat up 2 months of revenue and left us effectively to have to use our reserves. Long story short, we are going to have a really weak round this next round, which is really it's disappointing. So there's also those couple of factors, but it has a lot to do with the legislature sweeping severance funds to fill holes in the budget, and also they used to leave our reserves alone. And because this source of revenue is so volatile, we would keep back reserves so we could reliably support, when we are supporting projects, they're often like facing compliance deadlines, like, building wastewater treatment plants and really need that assistance. And so we do, 3 rounds a year to try to keep up and make sure that we're being helpful. And how we've been able to reliably do that is having reserves. Now, our reserves are a little bit vulnerable. So that's kind of the situation. We are assuming that, CML, CCI, and the Special District Association will probably be, taking a stance that that's not it's not an appropriate source for state expenditures. And we've seen a couple of local governments so far speak up about it, but that's the situation.
Tim, is this something that CCI has already talked about in the meetings, or is it gonna be coming up today?
They have talked about it a little bit. Lauren's in CCI today.
Yeah,
They've talked about it a little bit, but I think the majority of counties are aware, especially like extractive industry counties like us.
yeah,
So I think having CCI and CML and the special district support will be very helpful,
yeah,
but hearing from individual counties and then their boards and their commissioners will be very impactful of. Can't take that.
Is so the follow-up though, is this something that we should make sure we're voting on with CCI today?
Yeah, so it's not a bill yet. These have been under
Okay.
JBC, or Joint Budget Committee, hearings at the state. And the state is trying to plug its $1 billion hole.
Yeah,
Which,
$1 billion.
yeah,
so they haven't voted on it. I just wanna make sure that we don't lose our opportunity
Yeah.
with CCI to make sure that CCI is gonna start
and
working
yeah,
on it.
yeah, and then I think your advocacy at CCI will be great. I also think, with Elizabeth, Lauren and I keep, Elizabeth's providing these updates to us as well, but like, really, and then I think at some point, getting together with Julie and just doing.
Yeah, okay.
Tim, I'll send you Eaton statement. Only because it explains it really eloquently, and they're a little community, but they're heavily impacted in Weld County.
Mhm.
And it's kind of, they did a good job of articulating how important these funds are for small communities trying to pull off projects. So
I'm sure Clear Creek too, cause they've got the Henderson mine. That
Sure.
county must be
sure.
desperate for this to be saved. Okay.
Yeah, we really try to approach our projects holistically and consider all sorts of things, and we really get a lot done with these funds. Local governments really get a lot done with these funds.
I love
And there's
every
holes in the
developer.
budget for some really great reasons. It's really hard to say, like increases for COP and all the other things that have been brought forth by voters and the legislature aren't important. It's just that these funds really aren't appropriate to use for general purpose. It's not general fund money.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks
Well,
Randy.
thanks for making that more fun, Tim.
That's what I'm here for.
Aren't you a ray of sunshine?
We need our daily dose of anxiety.
Sure.
We're doing another DOLA training this afternoon, aren't we?
Yes, we'll be with, who does the land use training from DOLA?
Andy Hill, Casey McPherson.
Casey. Yeah, we'll be with Casey this
Wow.
afternoon.
Casey is a superhuman, and I'm super impressed that you guys got on her schedule. She's been bending over backwards trying to sort out all the new land use bills and figure out how we're supposed to be implementing. We're implementing a lot of the new housing assessment bill. We've added staff for that, so it's been a wild time here at DOLA.
Yes.
What is your how are you gonna approach recruitment or replacing Tim, basically?
I will send you the draft job description today, Randy. I will review it with the commissioners next Tuesday. And then I think after their feedback, we'll post it, so we'll do like the ICMA, CCMA, ACCA, do
Go on
those.
broad, huh?
Yeah, and we'll see, I don't think we need a recruiter for the position. But I think the first 2 weeks of applications will be telling.
Sure.
And I've talked with, the surrounding managers, as well if, they have any up and coming deputies that would wanna take the big seat.
Sure.
Or if you want to. You wanna move
Okay,
up here?
thank you so much for offering, though. I live at 9,000 feet and it's super plenty for me, thank you. I'm looking to head downhill eventually. I'm not trying to be even colder.
Fair.
But yeah, did you tell the
Well,
board about yourself?
I
Where you
did
came
tell
from?
the board about myself.
Tell them how cool you are with Adams State College?
I forgot to mention that. One of my side hustles or things I do for fun instead of as a job is to teach at Adams State's MPA. I grew up here in the Valley, and I've had Adams State in my blood for a long time. I used to go to classes with my mom when she was finishing her degree, and I got my MPA there. It's a great small local government program. I also run the Best and Brightest Fellowship program, which was really something I was really hoping Tim would consider, but then dropped a big bomb. Thanks a lot. But we use that program. We use a bit of impact funds to put MPA students into local governments, into small local governments for 2 years. To get them kind of onboarded into the city and county management profession. So it's that's some fun side hustles I have. But I also want to offer that we are happy to help with. We have a lot of resources for recruitment and interviewing questions, and they can review apps, sit in on interviews, and kind of support you guys need around that.
That's wonderful.
One of the many services we offer here at the Department of Local Affairs.
Randy should definitely be on your panel.
Oh, yeah. That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, I think I could offer some perspective. One important thing and unique thing about Lake County and Leadville is that we did another way that we try to support professional local government management is through when a community hasn't had a professional manager, we do a grant program that implements one. And the goal is to implement one permanently. So that's Tim. We also supported Lori Simonson, and we do that in smaller communities to try to establish that structure of government. So we participated pretty heavily in funding Lake County's kind of transition to professional management structure. So I'd love to sit in and help contribute to sort of keeping that in place and continuing all the good work all the amazing work that's been done in the last 3 or 4 years.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, on that note, I'll let Tim keep putting you through the ringer. Sounds intensive up there.
Thank you.
And please reach out if you have any questions or need support, and be in touch soon.
Thanks, Randy.
Thanks, Randy.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day and weekend.
You too.
Bye.
She is wonderful.
She's amazing. She's brilliant. She cares. She's very good at taking very complex things and distilling them down. She's a fabulous resource, so use her all the time. Engage with her. And her regional assistant Desiree is also great. So for some like the technical things, helping staff with like grants, grant reporting, that
Mhm.
kind of stuff, like looking out for grants, being like, hey, you should apply for that.
Awesome, that's awesome.
That's huge.
Yeah, so they're an amazing team. DOLA does provide a lot. But yes, I did, another leading question. I did bring up about that, cause I think we need to pay attention
Mhm,
to that of, when the legislature is looking for money.
mhm,
That is one place that they do look,
mhm,
and
So they can pilfer funds out of there
Yep.
without any kind of vote or anything, just.
but it has to go through a vote, I mean, it has to go through, the budget process at the state and through the JDC. So that, I think Elizabeth probably touched on this with you guys yesterday, but the joint budget committee at the state is like one of the most powerful bodies in the state. So it's made up of 6 legislators, 3 from the House, 3 from the Senate. It's always bipartisan. But when there's a majority of one party, they have the majority on the JBC. But when the budget, when the JBC and their staff are looking at developing the state's budget, so each state department, like my former department, right, has its own budget team, so working on that budget, and then that, since state departments report to the governor, but it's the legislature that sets the budget, so we work on creating the governor's budget. And then, it goes to the state, and then that's where the joint budget committee, as all of the governor's cabinet members come before and defend their budget or say, you were about to cut this. So there's a couple pots of monies, that the state will pilfer, that is one of them. They can't really go after their reserves, that'd be like a really big deal, but they don't have the healthiest of reserves at the state, but that's another area. The other, quote unquote, easiest area, but that has huge ramifications out across the state, is cutting provider rates for Medicaid. So we have millions of clients on Medicaid in the state. If you're a hospital or doctor, private practice, behavioral health provider, depending on the size of those cuts, it could make you not want to accept Medicaid clients. So that just blocks access to care for people, so it's not an easy situation that they are in, but anyway, it's, come on in, you took it.
Well, I hope there's a really strong initiative to abolish Tabor.
Well, and I think, that's one of the things, like, it would be great, in the state, like, people are elected, right, to manage the budget and to create the budget, and, do you need Tabor telling you to do that? On the other hand, the state and the local governments, or, local governments that haven't debruced, Lake County has debruced, but, for the state, like, maybe it's manageable or not.
Yeah.
Depends on your view of government
Yeah.
and spending, so.
I feel like we're ants building up our anthill, and at any point, we could just get stepped on by the state government and have it all smashed down into.
Indeed,
Flood comes through.
Yeah.
right,
And we just start rebuilding again.
or even, I
We're
mean,
resilient.
yes, we are resilient,
I like that
Um,
mindset, thank you, I needed to hear that. Good morning, Ann.
Good morning. We're a gritty crew, so.
Yeah, good old mountain folk ingenuity.
That's right.
yeah, yeah, I mean, that's the scary thing too, right, that, federal government, like, we know that there are going to be changes, we know that, but, it has an impact, right, on the services we provide locally,
Play the hand we're dealt and roll with the punches and.
Yeah.
Make the best of it.
yeah. Clark, is part of,
Community builders.
Community Builders, one of
Executive director.
Ann's partners, he'll be here in a few minutes, so if you wanna take a break.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes, please. I'm gonna have a long
Take it.
day.
I'm eating more regularly with this job, that's great, I used to sometimes go all day and never eat properly.
Yeah,
Nice change.
lean on the citrus though, cause
Put all the
Mhm.
crunching apples is like, I feel like the whole room's listening to me eat an apple, I'm like, oh my god.
The owl definitely isn't like.
What are you doing, what are you saying?
Go ahead.
Crunch,
Oh,
crunch,
okay.
crunch.
Okay, well, welcome and everyone we've got community builders with us today, Executive Director Clark Anderson. So I'm really excited to be presenting to you on the One Community Project in just outlining what the project is. We're gonna just kind of tell you about it. Clark's gonna tell you about community builders. And so I'm really excited about that. We also have Rachel Woolworth from Community Builders joining us too, and you may remember Rachel as the editor of the Herald. So we are so excited that she is back in our community working through community builders. So we were really excited when she was able to join our project team.
Very cool, Rachel.
So I just want to tell you a little bit about how we got to where we're at. Last year, just about a year ago at this time, we had applied for a workshop through community builders called Building Better Places. We're really recognizing, as you now are probably acutely aware, that we are in a time of tremendous change within our community. There's a lot of different pressures, more sophisticated development, growth issues. Our population, where we haven't had big increases, we've lost people in our community due to housing concerns. Our demographics look a little different. We have retirees coming in. We have a younger demographic joining our community, and so we have this real mix of kind of decaders and newcomers, and so a lot of different ideas and thoughts happening in our community. It's also a time that, we're struggling with kind of identifying how do you manage different economic drivers like tourism and mining in the same very small geographic area. So also the thought of being perhaps loved to death a little bit, some of our natural resources, how do we find that balance between tourism and local recreation opportunities? And so all of those factors and just this desire to be doing things better and really coming together as an organization to identify our priorities led us to wanting to reach out and go through this workshop with community builders. Clark's gonna kind of talk about their successes in other communities, but we were so inspired by what they were able to do in other areas facing these same kind of challenges. So we were really excited, a whole group of different leaders from the county went to community builders and went through an intensive 3-day amazing workshop. And we came out with an action plan. But one of the first things that we realized is that the issues that we were trying to solve needed to be looked at not only by the city, or by the county, but by the city as well. It was a time that there were some duplicative efforts happening, lots of really great intentions and energies, but we really needed to come back and look for alignment. We were hearing that from the citizens, from the residents of this community, wishing that there would be some better efficiencies perhaps between city and county government. And so as soon as we got back, we invited the city into this work. And initially what we thought, coming out of the workshop, we had the ability to apply for a technical assistance grant with community builders to help us work through our action plan from the workshop. So initially what we thought that we wanted to do was come back, invite the city into the process and start working on a unified vision between the city, the county, and the community. Really understanding that was really important right now, so we could start setting priorities. We've always been on a path to update the comp plan in that 10-year period in 2025. So we really thought, before we even launch into the comp plan, we really need to set our north. And so originally, what we first, when we got awarded the technical assistance by community builders, we were thinking, okay, we're gonna create this unified vision. But then we started realizing, well, what if we do all of this amazing, robust community engagement, do it in a way we've never done it before, have all the strength of our partnership with community builders, and then we take that scope of work, we take the vision, and then we go out to the kind of the model that we always traditionally used of going out and applying to, by RFP, to find a consultant to do our comp plan. Some of our pain points along the way have been that we feel like consultants come in with a cookie cutter approach. That this time, we wanted to go in with a strong identity, we wanted to drive the process, we wanted to make sure that our comprehensive plan really reflected us as a community with our goals and visions.
Love it.
And so out of that, I think it was Clark that said, well, what about if we do both? We stay in lockstep, they really roll up their sleeves and help us with this work, and we take that vision and then we go into the comp plan. And we don't run the risk of having that disconnect of going into, taking all of this amazing work and energy and then kind of going back to kind of, nothing wrong with that consultant approach, but we had this very amazing, unique opportunity. The city got behind that and said, absolutely, we think this sounds amazing, and there are incredible, not only benefits to having this partnership with the capacity and expertise and experience that community builders bring, but also having them as a fiscal partner has been amazing. That has been a tremendous cost savings to the city and the county, up to the tune of over $100,000 savings for both jurisdictions.
Wonderful.
So just to let you know, not only are we talking about an incredible opportunity to have quality engagement and quality work coming in to do this, but also the amazing opportunity that community builders give us from a fiscal responsible approach. So really excited about that. So I just want to, that kind of tells you how we got to where we're at. And the other thing that's noteworthy is this is the first time, and this is of interest, you'll hear it today from DOLA and Casey McPherson. There's this desire for more regional planning. And so this is the first time in the history of the city and the county that, we've done our plans at the same time, but we've never done a unified plan together. And so, this is of interest and excitement kind of all over the state, and DOLA's, really excited to see us doing this as well. So just this coming together and this unified approach for our master plan is unique, special, and we really are looking to do it differently than we've ever done it before. So that's kind of the genesis of the work. And then this next slide, and I need to, to get it interactive. Oh, okay, great. So let me move our bars here. So this kind of talks about how do we look at this is very much a two-step process. So the first step in this is creating that community vision, which then goes into our comp plan, our master plan. Our comp plan is our policy framework, our long-range guiding document. Things that are required under statute for a comp plan to have are tourism and recreation, housing, and a strategic growth. We are required to look at all of those within a comp plan. But other common elements that we're gonna be looking at are transportation, land use, economic development, affordable housing, environment, parks and open space, natural and cultural resources, hazards. I see you have your hazard mitigation plan there. Capital improvements, water supply and conservation, efficiency in government, sustainability and energy. So that creates that overarching policy framework, long-range guiding document. And from there, we then can start hanging our other plans that we have been working on. And some of those examples, these kind of show that dial down, drill down effect of street plans and corridor plans and downtown plans. And specifically for us, what that is like our transit planning that we're doing, our transportation planning, our climate action plan, our public health assessment needs. The other work that's being done at the city around historic preservation. So right now, what we're, hoping for is to kind of take a bit of a time out while we work on the comp plan. So any of those plans that are already underway, we've done a lot of work to look for opportunities to align with them so that we're not going out to public engagement and all of these kind of different touch points and causing a bit of confusion in the community of like, wait a minute, what's the one community project? But we're talking about climate action over here, and we're talking about transportation planning here, or we're talking about sustainability there. So we have been aligning with department heads and the city to just say, we understand that a lot of great work's underway, and we're gonna embrace that through the comp plan and the one community project. But if there's any possibility for us to just take a breath while we work out and get through this scope of work, it'll be really beneficial to just have that overarching process in first. From there, after we have our plans, that's when we have our regulatory tools and our policies, like subdivision regulations, like zoning, let me minimize this as well. And those regulatory tools can then be built and be consistent with those policies, our housing policies, our zoning code. Those are all our regulatory tools and policy tools. And then from there, we're able to leverage programs and investment, so capital improvement plans, and I know everybody always has to do a little bit of more, but more, yeah.
More, and then high floating lead-in controls.
Go away, yeah, there we go. And strategic investments. The other thing that it's really good to kind of understand is that that we having this unified city-county approach and being timely in our comp plan makes us very competitive when we are looking for additional funding opportunities and opportunities to look at partnerships and financing of different projects. So really, this just kind of gives that idea of how this framework works and the importance of kind of getting through our one community project before we engage maybe on some of these other topical issues. When to find it, and then our processes. So I wanted to, I don't know if we have any members of the project management team with us other than community builders. Let's take that back. Just to, oops, help me. I got away from our presentation. Thank you, Lord.
Chat people, or sorry, who are you looking for?
I was just going back to that. I was just thinking if we had any project management partners with us. I just want to get back to our share. It's right, I think it actually is just in the share screen. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, and then share.
Okay, oh, let me go back one slide. So I just want to kind of recognize and let you have an idea of who's on the project management team. So it was certainly this partnership between the City of Leadville, Lake County, and community builders. Directly, our project management team is Brooke Murphy and Rachel Woolworth from community builders. Myself, Chapin LaChance, as the planning directors for the city and the county, county planning staff, Melissa Kendrick, Cece Williams, our planning commissioner chair, Heather Lynn, planning chair, county planning vice chair, Joey Edwards, Gracia Castillo, as to help us reach our Latinx community. Rebecca Thomas sits on City Council, M. Descharme, who participates on, or is a board member on the City Planning Commission, and Steve Whittington, who is a member of the HPC, or the Historic Preservation. Then, in addition to that, we have held several what we call the engagement team. This is an open group that we are always willing to add more members to, but we really look at these as our community connectors. These are who we have gone out to encourage and help us have small group conversations and really broaden the scope of work. And so, and really make sure that we are looking at a robust engagement with a goal of really leaving no one behind. And so again, an open group, if there is anyone that wants to join, we are happy to have them join us. We just ask for a letter of interest, and then we kind of just vet that with the project management team, and we add them on. But this is really exciting to just kind of have different community connectors from all different walks within the community, lending their support to the project and having conversations about values.
If you had to think of a portion of the community that you would feel is unrepresented here in these groups and names that I'm seeing, what would you think? What would you say would be someone we could do a better job or wish we had more representation from?
I think that's a great question, and our hope is that we've been pretty thoughtful in this group, as well as working closely with our nonprofit partners in really looking at maybe what those marginalized voices are within our community. And so I would say right now, I'm hopeful, kind of with what we share out today of where we're doing engagement and how we're going about it, that we are hitting a lot of those different groups, but we wanna leave that conversation open. So we haven't identified like a big gap right now in any areas. We've tried to cover those with we have been out in meeting with like our seniors at the senior center. We've been at the high school. We've been in our ranching agricultural through our West Conservation District. So we have, we're meeting with Build a Generation, partnering with them across a lot of different platforms, the Housing Coalition, the Food Access, we have Fatima, Gloria Perez has been helping with some of the communication. So has Monica Martinez Ramirez, and then also Gracia in helping us. Christian has been helping us as well. On next week, we're gonna be out within the Mountain View Village community, talking about transportation. And so I would say that we're feeling like we really have tried to look across all different areas of our community and a population.
I get the feeling that the motorized recreation, the OHV group is kind of being excluded from this again.
Okay.
And if we continue to neglect providing a space for these members of our community, they're gonna be left recreating in places that create user conflict and create problems.
Absolutely.
So, I can just pick that out, just from my views, but I ask that because I'm wondering what other groups of the community, are we, that we aren't including, I'm not a hunter, but are we including enough hunters in these conversations, or, things of that nature. I worry that when we check all the usual boxes, but we usually forget a few, and I would like to not do that anymore.
Absolutely.
You're doing a great job with everything, but I just wanted to bring that to light.
absolutely. And we have looked at like the Elks Club and the Lions Club. And so these are just some, we also have a long list of different, any kind of organizations within the community. But so these represent some people that we feel like have kind of strong connections and voices to kind of aid in getting the word out. We do have, and I don't think I have it included in the slides, but I was happy to share it. We do also have a list that we looked at, tried to find all of the different kind of users or user groups, as well as different organizations, clubs, social clubs throughout the community. And so, but absolutely, again, open group, we want to reach everyone. So if there is someone that you identify, or a group that you identify that you don't feel that we need to get more word out, we do need to do more engagement. This is great, this is why we're doing this, to ensure. And we're going out to groups and asking the same question. So within the makeup of the small groups that we have, one of our questions is, are there other things that you participate within the community that you feel that, their voices maybe aren't being heard through this work? And so we are looking not just for our community connectors, but for anyone every time we have these small group conversations. So that's great information, Andrew, and absolutely we'll look for any recommendations of people to engage with and get the information out.
And that's a tricky one too, cause I know that there's not a ton of organized representation in some of these groups. So that's like, how do we reach these people that don't have, an acronym name group to come at us with their concerns?
Well, and they could be really intersectional with all of these, like like many people are hunters who would be on this list already.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna catch them, we all do lots of different things, right? So we're gonna catch a lot of them because they're potentially engaged already with one Leadville, one community.
Yeah, it was just, an example of
Yeah, it was
like,
great-
like I see a
great
few
point.
hunters up there for sure that I know, but like,
There's
it's,
probably even hunters you don't know. I'm a hunter.
Yes, exactly, I bump into people at the archery range all the time where I'm like, oh,
Oh,
hey,
look at you.
yeah.
Yeah.
What about, what's your youth engagement plan for this?
Really great question. We've got several different plans. So we've been at the high school with the leadership, but then we also are going to be in the bus that goes to, so we've got more, we're gonna be at the parent teacher conferences. We're gonna be in the bus that goes to both, I think, Lake Fork
Yeah.
and Mountain View Villages.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be in there, so we're working with the elementary school, intermediate school, and high school.
Awesome.
We've got we try to go out in the parent shout outs, we've been working with Bunny Taylor to get that information out. So I think what would be really great is to probably come back, and I see Clark has his hand raised and he wants to jump in here too. I also think that it might be a really great benefit for us to find a time with Brooke and the management team to just kind of go through all of the marketing that we've done, the outreach that's planned, and what's happening. So, but yeah, go ahead, Clark.
No, it's just such great questions and good conversation. So, and hello, everybody. I'll jump in at the time when I'm actually on too, but wanted to just take a moment to, chime in on a couple of these things and maybe share some perspective in terms of, how this process can work and how it's different maybe than your typical process. One, because of the nature of our partnership and the way that we're working on this together, the engagement work can be extremely responsive to your community. Normally what happens when you kind of hire in through an RFP, and there's, again, nothing wrong with doing that, but you've got a budget you're working within, and your consultants, are going to need to look at how much time they're spending in certain things. And so you tend to be pretty focused. And it's hard to go back and say, well, we kind of, that didn't work, or we missed these people, because, time and money keep marching on, and you're going to run out of both of them in that situation. And in our case, while time and money are certainly limitations we have, it's a partnership, and we're in it with you guys. And we have built in sort of accountability within this process. And in fact, part of the role of this group is not only to help us connect with the community. So if you think about this group as kind of a bunch of individuals who each have their own network within your community, by bringing them together and having them help us use their network to reach farther and farther out. It's this sort of network methodology to trying to reach out into the community. But then the other thing we're able to do is we ask them, we put them in the role of stewards for the process. Like, you guys gotta, be the dogs, protecting the flock here and make sure that we, as the project team, are covering all the bases and we capture as much data as we can on who we're hearing from. And if we find out that we're missing, voices in the community, whether it's, youth or retirees or whatever part of the community it is, that's something we're able to sort of see and then respond to. And then, I think where Anne was going in terms of keeping you guys in the loop and really helping us think about how to do this well is going to be extremely valuable and important for this project. At the end of the day, I mean, you guys have, I think, a very valuable and important role to play in this. And I think we'd love to sort of bring you further up to speed on sort of the methods and whatnot in terms of how we're approaching engagement so that you can, offer your feedback and ideas on that and just know what's happening. So when you're bumping into people in the grocery store, you can feel very confident in speaking to the process. And if they tell you, hey, I was disappointed with this part of it, you can bring it back to us. So we can, dive into more of that later, but I just wanted to be responsive to the questions as they were coming in.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Clark. So really great, and I do, like you said, there'll be times to make sure and a lot of check-ins throughout this process. So it is such a unique approach. So
Yeah,
I'm
it's
really
wonderful.
excited about that. So here are some of the project goals. Perhaps. Okay. Sometimes I forget which ones are interactive. So first is really identifying that shared community values to help us prioritize and plan for the things that really matter the most about our community. So, we really have to identify what those items are and then create that clear vision for our community that provides direction, that can help shape our policies and our plans and our decisions that will take us there. But like Clark has said, and he's gonna talk a little bit more about this too, there's gonna be a lot of check-in times to say, this is what we heard, this is where we're going, did we get it right? So it's not gonna be that approach with, here's your sheet of deliverables from your consultant, and here's your time frame, and this is what we were able to get, and here it is. This has a completely different feel to it and a different, just making sure that there is that back and forth of this is where we believe that we're at, but did we get it right? And there'll be those adjustment points in those times to look at that. And then really creating an actionable plan. We're not gonna do anybody any good if we go through all of this and we create a plan that sits and grows dust, right?
Mhm.
So it really is identifying those goals, priorities, and strategies as well as guidance for implementation to make the vision a reality. Like we've gotta make sure that this is an actual plan. And strengthen our ability to work together. So I think that we can all agree that there's a lot of passion and good intentions within our community, but we do need to kind of look at how do we collaborate and tackle those complex issues in a way that's productive and moves us forward. So, we all are aware that there's a lot of narratives out in the community, and so we really want to get out and find a way to bring those voices together and find a way to be productive and move forward. And that's particularly an amazing strength. There are just the quality of the work of community builders and the outcomes that they've had in other communities really is the reason that we sought them out. And so Clark's gonna share a little bit about their experiences and successes in other communities. But we really also think community builders also kind of brings that ability in to help us have those conversations that aren't easy. So we're really excited about that. And we really believe that that's a very important role. And then align regional and local efforts to ensure that initiatives and plans are cohesive. So again, you can probably think about times that, that perhaps the city and the county are both trying to tackle very similar issues, but are approaching it differently. So this is a way to really look at unifying those approaches, leveraging the relationship, and coming out with a more cohesive approach. So those are our goals associated with the scope of work associated with creating that community vision, or that shared vision. And now I'm going to, you've already met Clark, but it's really that workshop for us, I can't emphasize it enough how transformational it was to have us come back and realize that the importance of doing it this way. And so I'm so excited to be working with Clark and his team, and the amount of work that Brooke and Rachel are doing as our partners it's just amazing. We would have never been able to accomplish or be where we're at right now without this partnership. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it on over to you, Clark.
Well, thanks so much. I sure wish I was in the room with you guys, and it won't be long before that happens. Exciting that you guys are all diving into this. I'm sure it's been, what do they say, drinking from a fire hose. I hope it's going well. This is a big opportunity, and I'm actually, we're very excited about this project. And I think said well, the significance of it. It's not typical and normal for municipalities and counties to collaborate on a comprehensive plan like this, but they should, because what is very typical is for municipalities and counties to really struggle, particularly at that interface between the edge of the municipality and the county, where there's always going to be sort of things blending up against each other. And that's why, the state requires these things called 3 mile area plans and whatnot that are intended to help address that. But when you come in and you start from a place of getting on the same page around where is it we're trying to go as a community and a region, and then work backward from there in terms of the strategies and actions and sort of planning framework that you want to realize that vision, it's a very powerful opportunity. And for you all, I mean, stepping into these, it's kind of like, great. We get to have a strategic we're going to jump right into strategy and vision right away. I know this kind of got started before you guys came in, but I just want to share that I'm excited. We are excited as an organization. I'm excited individually about the potential of all this. I think it's just useful to begin to, I'm going to talk a little bit about community builders and our approach before diving in and talking about where we are in the project and where we're headed, and maybe share a story of a similar situation that we finished, a similar project that we finished recently. But maybe just adding a little bit more to the context here and just sort of how this, maybe how to think about some of this work. So we work with communities all over the West, community builders. We're a nonprofit. And one of the things we're seeing, over and over again is communities that are in the face of these really dynamic changes that we're experiencing economically, socially, demographically, and really just sort of the change is uncomfortable. We are seeing a lot of communities that I like to say they're sort of lost in the forest. And it's what's happening is communities are becoming increasingly sort of swept up and often increasingly feeling division because it's not clear exactly where we're headed as a community. We can feel that things are changing, and we know that change feels uncomfortable, and it becomes very, very difficult to make effective decisions and policies and plan ahead in ways that actually gain a level of community buy-in and support that enables the political will to move forward with things. And so this is something we're seeing everywhere. This is not something that's specific to you guys. And I think it's a dynamic that's out there. But one of the most powerful things you can do, just like as an individual person, one of the things we can do to really take agency in our lives is get clear about where we're trying to go, and then think about how we're going to get there and take those steps to do it. And that's really what this project is about in many ways, is helping you guys get clear about the future you want. So, maybe from there, talking about who we are and, what the heck do we do here? How do we fit in? we formed Community Builders part because even, 10 years ago, we're hitting our 10-year anniversary this year. We saw this dynamic where so many communities around the West were really struggling with the legacy of a lot of the challenges that came from past growth and economic development decisions that weren't working very well on the ground. And they weren't creating communities that were fiscally sustainable. They were leaving too many people behind. They were environmentally unsustainable. And the status quo was sort of pointing us in a direction that was just sort of looking at these things getting worse and worse. And yet there were so many leaders in these communities that really wanted to step up and kind of they could see this isn't working right. And they wanted to do things differently. And they could see also that things were going to get worse. And so we began by partnering with those leaders in those communities that sort of said, let's try to find a way to make some shifts and try to offer a better, more livable future for the people who live here. And that's how we got started, is working on that kind of bricks and mortar side of helping local leaders and communities problem solve and do, effective community planning and economic development work that tried to make that on the ground change. Along the way, we realized that there was a more foundational set of challenges that we were helping solve. And that became sort of the secondary problem that we now exist to solve. And that is what I like to call the civic problem. And that is our ability to actually make meaningful progress in these areas, whether it's housing, how we're growing, our transportation systems, our ability to service and maintain the infrastructure systems we have, building an economy that really works for the people who live here. These are hard things to do, and they're made only harder by the fact that our communities are increasingly divided in the way that we perceive these issues and our ability to work together to solve them. And so, we can of course see this at the national level, but in communities, one of the reasons that they are such potent and amazing places to work and why you guys are in such a great position where you are is, like our feet touch the ground in communities every day. These are places where you really can do things that make a difference in people's lives. That's why we focus on communities, because it's such an amazing place to have impact on people's lives. And so there are things we can do. But in order to be able to get to that kind of bricks and mortar change that we want to see to shape communities and economies that work better for people, we have to do the civic work as well in terms of strengthening leadership, strengthening civic engagement, and ultimately building a level of community will and buy-in towards the things that matter and that we want to do, that we can get them done. And so that's a lot of sort of our approach is geared around those things. We provide training, technical assistance, and tools to communities that want to work on these things. And our orientation is really one of partnership. So I'll talk just a little bit. Anne already talked some about the sort of approach we have. I just want to underscore a couple different points. Most importantly is that when we partner with a community, we mean that. We come in and we look at ourselves as we're working shoulder to shoulder. And that means, and I know staff is finding this, there's times when things that you'd expect the kind of consulting team to do, we're like, great, you guys want to take a first pass at that? And that's important because one of the things that's happened in the sort of ways that we've been doing things for a long time in terms of planning work is we've gotten so used to leaning on outside expertise that we've forgotten how much, capacity and expertise we actually have in-house. And the ability of your staff to sort of come in and be like, we can do this stuff too, and roll up their sleeves and work with us on it is a really big part of the project. And it's going to go the same way for the community. The community engagement that we're going to do is going to be a type of engagement where we're actually going to be asking people to help us. We're not just going to quip and, quibble about things. We're going to identify problems, and then we're going to roll up our sleeves and try to problem solve. And it's hard for a while. Sometimes people are like, wow, we're digging into these questions, but it's also really, people find it really gratifying and interesting. And then they've got some real accountability on the solutions we land on, because they're like, well, I was in the room. I remember landing on that idea, and they were part of it. So our approach really leans into these ideas of us as partners. We're not going to do all the work. We're not, we bring expertise. We can, we get this stuff, but we're also going to help you guys find the expertise in your community. We believe a lot in, well, I'll talk about this in a second, but building civic capacity. And that's really just sort of helping your community show up in ways where they're informed and can engage in this stuff meaningfully. And then we really believe in sort of making sure we're doing this in a way that strengthens partnerships and collaboration so that you guys beyond this project are better able to take on these kinds of issues. So that's sort of how we operate and what we're trying to do. We can skip to the next slide. I mentioned building civic capacity, and this is just a significant portion of how we work with communities and and why we think this works matters. And at the end of the day, we're going to help you guys create a really great plan. It's going to be a great product, but it's, we all talk about plans getting on the shelf. The way we keep them off the shelf is we build the civic capacity needed to be able to actually move it forward. And that when that plan is outdated, you're in position to do this again and again, and really have the tools in terms of your ability to have good conversations, do effective community engagement, your leadership, and all the systems behind that to make a meaningful change. So in addition to helping you guys do this process and this plan, we'll be doing things throughout. They're going to be oriented around that building of civic capacity. And right now that might seem fussy and fluffy and weird, but over time, I think you'll gain a sense of what it's about. Now shifting into the project, this is our sort of typical process framework for something like this. We start with groundwork, which is sort of the basic stuff you got to do to get a project like this off the ground. It's putting the systems together, it's clarifying and agreeing on the scope, it's building the teams that we've created. We've got multiple different teams that at a different point, maybe we can go into more detail on what those teams are doing and how they're working. And we put together sort of the communication systems behind the project, all of the different stuff that you need to be able to do a project like this well, right? And then we head into this, next phase we call assess. And assess is really, we're asking the question before we start looking to the future, like, where are we today? And we do this in two parts. One is sort of like the head part. It's like the Dr. Spock part. And that's where we sort of look at data and trends and kind of existing conditions, very typical comprehensive plan stuff. And that's really important. The other part of it, though, is like the heart. It's like the Captain Kirk part, and that's value. And we're going to talk more about the values work that we're doing right now and why it's important. But that's sort of the other key part. And what we're trying to do there is really understand what matters most to people in the community. So we have this blend when we talk about sort of assessing where we are today of sort of what's happening in a sort of objective way, but also where are the people in the community? Like, what really matters to them? What are they experiencing? What are their hopes and fears and concerns? From there, once we have a good sense of where we're at now, we can have a meaningful conversation about where we want to be. And that's where we get into the next stage of envisioning the future that we want. From there, we have a discussion about like, okay, well, how do we bridge the gap between this, these aspirations we have for the future and the goals we've identified there and the realities of today? And that's where we get into strategies and action planning. And this gets really, I kept saying, roll up our sleeves. This is where we're really rolling up our sleeves with community members, learning about the different things that communities, like yours have done and can do to tackle these types of problems and coming up with strategies that are going to work here. And again, we bring in expertise, we'll bring in information, but we'll also be bringing the community through it the whole way. This isn't just the type of thing where people come in and they throw some sticky notes on a flipboard and that's what they get to do. Like, we really bring people in where you're going to help us solve the problems, okay? And it's different, it's unique, but it's also very, I think it's very impactful in terms of what you can then get done on the implementation side. Finally, we'll be putting the plan together, and some of the work that'll be coming into this as well, beyond the sort of product of the plan, is what I like to call stewardship, which is how we're going to keep this plan active and alive past the process, because the process will end, but the intentions behind it hopefully are things you guys will want to decide to sustain. We can keep moving. Unless you guys, does anybody have any questions on the overall framework?
Could you define systems?
Yeah.
Like, elaborate a little bit on that for me?
Yeah, so it's a term that I probably overuse to mean any number of things, from a one-page document that's a background about the project, to a website, to the spreadsheets we use to capture and collect data, like the engagement data that comes in, or who the teams that we have are. So it's all of the sort of organizing stuff we have behind a project. We call that systems. So it's probably, overuse, I'm kind of expanding the word beyond what people often think of it as, but it's that kind of stuff. It's all the organizing stuff you need to do to make it so you've got your files, you've got your spreadsheets, you've got your communications, and any tools you need to create for the project to be successful. And it varies by project by project. We don't have like a canned approach for any of these. So we come in and we help the teams that we build, which we think of as kind of a system too. Like, it's a team as a part of the system of the project. And, those teams, then one of the engagement team, which Ann mentioned earlier, like they're helping us think about the engagement strategies you guys want to use. So hopefully that answers the question.
The other thing that pops into my head is, there's you were I think you were saying civic, but the speaker's a little fuzzy sometimes, and
Oh, sorry.
I kept hearing cynic, cynic problem and cynic engagement, and it made me think, how are we engaging the people who are cynical of this, and how are we, dealing with the problem of the people who are, thinking like, oh, is this too much too fast? Are we just laying out a plan where we're gonna hit the fast forward button on a bunch of things we think is good right now, and if it's not good down the road, this I worry about the misconceptions that can arise from things. We're using so many buzzwords and catchy phrases, and I would really like to hear like some specific examples of how this type of project has been implemented in other communities in the past, and like concrete examples of how it's helped them. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry, there's probably this information out there I could have dug up, but
No.
it's just, this comes into my head as I'm hearing this, and I worry what other people in the community think.
Heck yeah. No, that's great. Let me hit that from a couple different spots. First of all, glad to know that the speaking isn't coming across perfectly. Civic is what I was saying.
Okay.
But your question, the substance you brought us to in terms of cynic and the people that are skeptical is spot on. At the last meeting we had of the engagement team, I actually encouraged everybody to carry their cynicism and their skepticism with them, because we kind of need it. We need people to come in with that and be apprehensive about where things could go wrong and exactly the types of questions you're bringing up. Do we really think people are going to buy into this language or this approach? And because that's going to make it better. There will be cynics. And let me tell you, we've done a lot of interviews and analysis and groundwork to sort of understanding where the community is. And even, before this project begins, you guys probably know there's a lot of cynicism and skepticism in the community, including, some that's directed at the county and local government in general. So we're coming in with that. That's very typical these days. It's part of sort of the dynamics I was describing. And those folks, the main thing we do not do is we do not avoid them, and that's what I talk about often. You might hear me talk about avoidant engagement. That's the normal way people tackle that problem, as they sort of build their steering committee and make sure that those folks aren't on it. And they try to avoid bringing them in because they know they're loud voices and they know that they can sometimes they say things maybe that sting. And that's not the way to do it. Our work is oriented towards like, great, let's hear it, let's talk through it. I want to know what you're cynical about. And most often that cynicism, that skepticism is rooted in very real concerns that they've experienced and are things that we're going to need to work on. And including, I think one of the things I'm going to encourage you guys to do as community leaders and local officials in this space and in this project is like, there's going to be stuff we're going to hear about the county, and the same thing's going to happen with the city that isn't, favorable all the time. And so it's a great opportunity to take some of that feedback and learn and hear from people. And then there are also going to be things that people come in and they're going to say this project is really dumb and so on and so forth. And, we have to earn their respect and their trust. And that's what we'll do through the process. And so far, we've never, gotten to the end of a project and it's been very rare when there's a lot of cynics at the end. There's always a couple folks sometimes that's just sort of their nature. But we'll get to a story in just a minute about a similar community, similar in some ways that went through this. So great question. Keep them coming.
Great.
So just briefly on this sort of values phase, one of the reasons, you might ask, like, why values? Talk again about something that sounds fluffy and like, what does that even mean? We live in a time when facts, unfortunately, facts don't really matter anymore. And if we're talking facts, we're like, whose facts? And so it's very hard to agree on certain things. But what we can do is we can talk about values. And values are the things that are sort of what really matters most to us. And as it turns out, there's actually a lot of, great sort of study in this. There are, core sets of human values that, while they differ a little bit across cultures, are amazingly sort of resilient across different places in terms of what shows up time and time again, things like safety and family and opportunity. So when you start exploring what those look like and what they mean at the community level, when you talk to people, it can be a pretty powerful experience. And so, and it can be very valuable in terms of what you get as input for a project like this. And so we start this process with these questions that are very different from the normal process where you'd say like, what are the big issues? Or what are your, what are the needs? We'll get to that stuff. But instead we start like, what do you love about this place? Why do you live here? Why do you want to live here? There's so many places you could live. Why here instead of somewhere else? It's probably not always that easy to live in Leadville and Lake County. So, we start with that and we try to do it. The best ways that we do this is actually in these very small groups. We'll talk a little bit more about these in a second, where people are talking to their neighbors or maybe people that they don't know in their community, and a group of, 3 to 6 people is the ideal. And in that group, they're starting to share with each other what they love. And they're going around the group talking about their story, how they got here, why they stay, what their experience is. And what happens in that experience is they not only kind of start to feel connection to some of the people in their community, but they understand the different needs and issues in the community much better. And we then go into questions about, what are your fears and concerns for this community? And fear is a very different question, and it taps into a different sort of part of your brain than when I just say, what are the big issues, right? And then we talk about your hopes and your aspirations. And that's, again, it's a different thing than saying, what are your goals for the future? And so these are the things, these questions tap into a part of our minds that allow us to sort of really think about what matters most to us. And the values become this very foundational initial step that we build from. They become useful tools for you all as decision makers in the future. We did a big project in Gunnison County along these lines way back in 2016, and they still have at the county, at all the county commissioners, their dais, each one of them has the values from that process still that sits there for when they're making decisions. The One Valley Prosperity Project values are right there still. So it's a pretty cool thing to just see how they continue to lean into that work almost a decade later. So we're doing this work right now. You can skip to the next slide. There's just going to be, and I'm going to come to the story in a minute, but just want to let you guys know next week, there's going to be some of these types of conversations going on. You can see an example of one happening here. These are really cool, for people in the community that might be listening, like these are cool. I promise you, it's a fun experience. You go in, you're talking to people you may or may not know, and you're hearing their stories, and it's very, I think, gratifying for people. So I encourage people to sign up if they can. And if not, reach out to our team if none of these times work and let us know. And we can always try to set up a different time. Next slide. Here again, sort of, this is, so, oh, sorry. And so these are the larger community meetings that are happening again next week. We have one each day of the week focused on sort of different parts of the community. We have one down in the Twin Lakes area Wednesday. We have a Spanish language community kickoff on Tuesday, one both at midday and one in the evening. And then on Thursday, we have a kickoff in Leadville. And in those meetings, we'll be learning about the project, but most importantly, we'll actually be breaking people into these smaller group discussions and having these values conversations. And it's going to be pretty cool. I really encourage people to come. You'll learn a lot about the people in your community. And you're not just going to be sitting there sort of staring at slides and talking about, planning and stuff like that. It'll be pretty cool. Next slide. Okay, just want to share quickly a story of some work that we recently finished in Silverton, Colorado. It actually ended up getting picked up by the New York Times because the level of division that was taking place in Silverton as we came in was significant enough that it had garnered national news attention. And we came into that, it was a bit of a hot mess at the time. And it was a community that was divided around probably things that are familiar to you guys. Questions of like, how much tourism is too much? And how do we continue to sort of grow both economically and as a community and meet the needs we have, like housing needs, but how do we do that without kind of losing the soul and character of who we are? how do we make sure that the locals that are sort of so critical of the place, this sort of real characters, like how do we keep that character? And how do we, how do we do all this in a way that doesn't divide us? And they were really struggling with that. So we came in, and you can skip to the next slide, worked with them on a very similar type of process that, the goals were about bringing the community together, identifying shared values and vision, then developing a strategy that could realize that vision, and throughout it building trust and civic capacity. And so very much of the same kind of overall approach. Again, we sort of design the details for every project and every community, sort of it's iterative. So it's not the same, but the same overarching framework. And over the course of, I think the overall project, this started out in COVID and took place there, parts of it took place during COVID. So it was more drawn out than it would have been, but I think it ended up being about a 16, 17-month project, through just ginormous amounts of engagement and community, everything from super small one-on-one interviews to small group meetings to big community events and online surveys and virtual learning sessions and all this different stuff. I mean, I drank a ton of coffee and beer in that community just talking to people, and come out on the other side, and they had really bridged and kind of found a common path forward that they wanted to take. They did problem solving together, collaboratively as a community, including sort of across the divides that they had. And while, there's always going to be controversy in these great mountain communities, because the stuff we're debating is meaningful. We should be having hard debates about it, but we got to learn how to debate productively. And we got to stop sort of playing the game against each other and turn the chessboard around and be our community against the issues. And that's sort of the switch we made in this project. And they've had, great success since. I'll share a few pieces from the project if you keep going. So these are just examples of, the values that they ended up creating, had to deal with they were really concerned about their town just becoming a place that didn't feel real. They were really concerned about sustaining their connection to nature. That was very important to them. It's a family town. There's a lot of, young families in a small school, and they really wanted it to continue as it changed to be a place that really works for kids and for family, and where the kids can run around free range in the streets and people have eyes on them. It's also a community where it's small enough that everybody kind of feels like they can be involved. They wanted to sustain that. So you can see these are some of the examples. This isn't all the values, but this is some of the examples of the values they landed on. Next slide. From the values, then in the envisioning stage, we help them identify a set of overarching goals that would guide the work. Now, just like you guys, their project was geared towards creating a community-wide comprehensive plan. Theirs was specific to the municipality, so it didn't include the county, but in terms of sort of the transition from an overall visioning process into a policy plan, very similar. And you can see some of the types of goals they had. They really wanted to try to make their economy more year-round, which had a lot to do with not being so reliant on tourism, and making some more strategic investments in some of the key infrastructure needs they had. They were really concerned about how they were growing and making sure they were doing it more responsibly. Really very focused on housing as well. That's one area they've really carried forward since the project ended, and done a lot of work to update their code, create new housing programs, create new housing resources, new housing staff. So they've gotten a lot done building on the vision of what's in here. And then actually done a lot of work around sort of aligning their environmental goals with some of the community planning they need to do. So these are some of the goals, and then those translate into, if you go to the next slide, different. Oh, I guess I don't have the strategy slide. Anyway, there's a series of strategy examples, but just suffice it to say that, those goals then shift into a much more detailed and tactical set of specific strategies and programs and actions that can be taken on, some of which taken on by the local government, some of which are things that actually need to belong to somebody else. So one of the things we really do, and Anne spoke to this, is make sure it's really clear, like, who's doing what in the project, and that it's clear who's responsible, where the resources are. And if we don't know who's going to do it or how it's going to get funded, we put it over in a different place. It's sort of more in an idea box, because to Anne's point, the last thing any of us want to do is give you guys strategies and actions that you can't do, because nobody's going to sign up for it, and it's not clear that the resources are there. So we can still put it in the plan, but in terms of its level of priority, it comes down. This is us just at the end. We sort of the engagement team got together and was kind of celebrating the end of the project. And it was really fun. By this point, actually, this article in the New York Times hadn't even come out yet, but they were really excited. And then, a couple months later, they ended up finding themselves getting featured in the New York Times. And the story behind that story is that a guy from the New York Times, a political reporter, had heard about all of the political division and discontent, and he wanted during COVID, and he wanted to go and do a follow-up story and hear about what was happening. And he kept interviewing people in the community who said, yeah, no, it's pretty good now. It's pretty good now. And they kept getting pointed back to this project. And so I get a call from him one day and he says, like, what in the world, what are you guys doing? What's happening? And he ended up flying out and we met in Silverton and walked around and talked to people. And it was a neat experience just to sort of see how this small community came together in this way and went through a level of division where, they had people from major news, Fox News was in Silverton doing this story, right? In the middle of COVID. And then, 18 months later, they're featured in the New York Times as a place that's like giving us a model for how we can come together. And look, this wasn't just us. This was very much them. They stepped up. They did it. The story is about them, but it was really neat to be a part of it. So that's a good example. We have a lot of other examples in terms of how these projects have translated into policy and programs and projects that we'd be happy to share at whatever point. But for today, we just kind of wanted to keep it at a high level so you guys understand the overarching idea. And I think that's all I have, Anne.
Okay, great. Oh. Great, so we just wanted to leave a little bit of time if you have any questions or, I do see that you could have an opportunity to bring the project management team in and have a check-in with you, just kind of let you understand or share, where we've been with the marketing and the engagement and, but we'd be happy to share that too. And also looking for, opportunities to identify any groups that we should be putting a little more effort into. Awesome.
I think, my main questions were addressed pretty well there. Yeah, I need to immerse myself in this and learn more so that, I'm not, just to come from a place of, like confidence in what I'm learning and asking the right questions instead of just rattling off stuff right off the top of my head. So I think, for me next, it's just attending some of these events and getting a deeper look. That slideshow, I didn't see that in our packet, is that available to us?
Yeah, I'll put it in Teams. I'll put it in here.
Cool,
Yeah.
thank you.
I'll get it uploaded in Teams.
Because, yeah, I think like, as soon as you bring up, a real world example, and like Silverton, and I was really surprised I didn't recognize anyone in that picture, to be honest.
Same, I was
But-
looking for my
I
friend.
know we did, but
Ask your friends about it if you know anybody down there. That I think I'm sure not everybody had the most positive, a positive experience, but I think most people did. Definitely ask your friends. I got to know a lot of people. It's fun.
okay.
The other thing I would mention is that when we went to the workshop, I was really struck by so many people were back because they couldn't get enough. The room was full, communities were sharing out what their struggles were. There were lots of common themes and just the buzz in the room during the workshop too of the successes of, the One Valley project is really an exciting project too, and there were some members, there were some Silverton folks there were some representatives that had been part of the One Valley project as well, and so just to be in that space with community members and leaders within those communities that were just talking about how transformational this has been and how to come in and embrace those tough topics and conversations and the progress that they made. I mean, it was really, we all got so excited because we kind of hadn't been feeling like we were wandering in the wilderness a bit. And as you already know, we kind of came in, I've been with the county for 11 years, but once in the last, notably, since just before COVID and then certainly after COVID, you know, we have all been trying to solve so many problems and that it's been overwhelming. So trying to identify priorities and set that north, you know, just getting that first introduction into what community builders has the ability to help a community do was so inspiring. So I just again, like, you know, it was a competitive process to even get chosen by community builders to be able to participate in this, because we had to be able to demonstrate a certain readiness, and we had to be able to demonstrate that, you know, we were committed to this process. So just excited, you know, we've had the first time ever to have 3 new county commissioners, so just wanting to kind of make sure that if there's any way that you need more information and, you know, that hope of keeping the momentum going, and so excited to have your support behind the project, and excited for you to attend these kickoff events this coming week, because I think you'll get a real hands-on. Melissa and I have been going out in the community and doing the small group conversations, and they're great, because those 3 questions really spark great conversations across you know, the table with people that may not necessarily agree on things. They can find you can still find common threads with those. So it's really fun when you get into that space and start actually going through the exercise. And so this will be really interactive and a great time for you to really hear from your constituents too. So it's really exciting.
Detaching emotions completely and just looking at this purely from a logic standpoint, what does this whole process cost Lake County?
$40,000.
Amazing.
That's pretty
Most
good.
comp plans we're hearing upwards of the kind that we would be doing well over $200,000.
Yeah.
And that's just
And
the
we have
comp
to do
plan.
it, it's not like.
That's
Yeah,
not
we're
the
mandated.
vision work that we're doing.
Right.
So that would just be the comp plan, like when I was talking to DOLA about fundraising, I thought that we would be going to get a mineral impact grant to be able to do our comp plan, and I'm talking to Randy Speed, and she's like, man, you better be planning for $200,000 for just the comp plan.
Wow.
So this
Right.
2-part process, so we've spent $40,000 so far.
So far. Good
That,
job.
that's our
That's
commitment.
so the partnership we have is what we try to do. We don't have like a specific match amount, and in this case, because we want to be able to sort of respond to the needs and capacity of different communities, and we're really, you know, we're here to work with like the places like, you know, we're not doing this up in Aspen or Vail, you know, they've got plenty of resources. So I think in this one, you guys are in for 40. I believe the city is also in for 40. And then I think we're in for 45 or 50. We're doing some fundraising to try to add to the budget, because it would be great to have some additional money to be able to do some pieces of this that we just think would be good, you know, additional work. But we've got enough money to do, you know, I think some, you know, what we want to do. And you can see how by splitting that up in a partnership, it makes it attainable for everybody. And it is kind of an amazing, it's one of the things that's really cool about it.
I'm so grateful that it starts with values and storytelling. It's something I've been really contemplating over the last few years. It's like, how do we start talking about shared values, and how do we come closer together and find connection? And it's wonderful that we can use this like necessary project to kind of be the vehicle to bring these discussions into our community, because we really need it.
You know, as you know, comp plans obviously for our planning department are a heavy lift. And so just knowing that we were getting ready to do an update to the comp plan in the current environment that we were feeling daily was daunting to think, how are we gonna start creating our, you know, long-range guiding policy while there are so many big issues affecting the community, and so I think, you know, I reached out to Clark just being kind of like, help. Like, I don't even know where to start, Clark, but let me tell you all the things that we're doing in our community. You know, we're doing this, and we're doing this, and we're doing this, and we're doing this, and we're doing this. but we need to get, a better kind of prioritization of things. There's lots of great intention, a lot of great energy, and we wanna make all these positive changes. But, so finding community builders and having that first conversation and just letting, he just kind of let me kind of vomit it all out of okay,
Awesome.
this is all happening, and we've got great energy and excitement around things, but we're also, lost in the wilderness a bit because we've got so many different viewpoints, thoughts, projects, needs.
Mhm.
And so how do we sort this out and how do we come together? And so you said, I think it sounds like you need to apply for the workshop.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, I credit you guys for having sort of patience, because you were like, we need some help as soon as possible. And I was like, I would love to help you. I think the first thing you guys got to do is this coming spring, we're going to be hosting one of these workshops, and it's a pretty intensive deal. You want to bring a team, and that's going to open the door for, I think the best route forward. And I'm really glad. It's fun to think back to that time. I'm glad you guys did it. I think you guys are well positioned for this. It's going to be, it's going to be a heavy lift for the whole community. There will be some turbulence, like we'll definitely hit some tough points. And especially early on when people are trying to figure out what to think of all this. Not to mention, there's obviously a lot happening right now, and people are trying to understand sort of, where we are and what's happening in our communities. And I think there's going to be, some turbulence for a little while here. But I think we're going to help you guys ride it out. And this process is really, really offers a lot. I think for the community and also for you guys as new elected officials. And so to that end, I just want to offer, um, you know, we are always I'm happy to get on the phone and talk. And what I mean by that is it's not like a back around or end around in the process. It's more you guys as leaders. I mentioned at the very beginning, like part of our whole theory of change is, how do you strengthen local leadership and give these folks who come into these positions like you guys have? And, it's not like most people come into those spots with like, their master's degree in public policy and economic development and urban planning and all this stuff. And so they bring a lot of experience and expertise. And so it's really, part of our job in here is to sort of help be, partners and collaborators in how you guys can step into these roles as individual and unique leaders, which is to say, if you ever want to sort of have a conversation or like, what's the best way for me to engage in this, or how can I help? I want to be I'm having these conversations right now with another community that's even in an even like actually a very, very divided moment. And the council members are asking like, how do we get in and help without stepping on things and making problems? And so I just want to avail you guys of that opportunity to talk and whether it's in person over coffee when we're in town or over the cell phone or whatever. So just know we're here. It's not like you're dealing with a consultant where you pick up the phone and I'm like, hang on, let me start the timer so I know how much to charge you for this call. It's just a relationship.
Great,
I feel very lucky.
yes.
Cool.
Probably should give you time for lunch.
Thanks.
Thanks, you guys.
All right, hey, thanks, Clark.
Thank you, Clark.
Talk to you soon.
Good weekend.
You guys too. Hopefully we'll see you next week. I'll be over there.
Nice.
Bye-bye.
I think we're done
This is
until